Hello, everybody. Welcome into debate night. We are back yet again. We had a major go down this past weekend, so we're going to talk all about it before we gear up for the next major, which will be happening very shortly in a similar location. We've got the same cast this week. We weren't originally going to have the exact same cast. We had some people drop out. Hannah decided to jump back in, so we got to run it back from last week. Should be a great show. Man of the people, what have you got?
I don't know if I am a man of the people anymore. I think that might be up for
Oh,
debate. I
people
think
are kind of fired up after last week.
people people here's the thing. I think we are, which is I guess exciting in some way. People are starting to clip this show out as specific things and not getting the full context of what we're talking about. So hopefully we have maybe some new viewers that
Good
actually will
sign.
listen to the entire show. But yeah, I think some people were we're getting a little flustered by what I was having to say, that ultimately having back-to-back majors is stupid.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think, yeah, I would not
Which if
disagree
you
with
think
that
that's an
statement.
awesome thing, then sure, let's debate on that. But that was
That was,
basically the point.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah, maybe we're making it now. Hunter's back. What's up?
Howdy. Yeah, I saw. I mean, I've seen that feedback a bunch, and like I think that what it is people have such a like they love this tournament. They love this tournament so much, the European Disc Golf Festival, and rightfully so. If you're a player, from what I understand, how the way you're
This is a
treated
great
and all that
tournament.
out there, and they think that saying that the PDGA putting back-to-back majors will make this one less relevant because the next one's Worlds is somehow a negative slight towards the tournament itself. But
Yeah.
it's like, that where in that sentence did I say European Disc Golf Festival is a worse major? I didn't say that. I said it being 2 weeks before Worlds will make. Actually, Brodie said it, but anyways, it being 2 weeks before Worlds will make it less relevant. And if you don't agree with that statement, that's just I'm sorry, we just disagree. That's
We
fine.
also got very lucky that the winners were the winners.
Correct.
Because had it been like Gannon just winning another just tournament by 5 shots or whatever, this tournament would have, and again, people are gonna get upset about this, but this tournament would have gotten forgotten a lot quicker with Worlds being right next to the corner. Because it's weird though when you say something, because I've talked about this on this show and other shows many times. I don't think the emphasis that's put on Worlds makes sense. I think it should be the same as every other major, because there's nothing different with it being Worlds other than there's one extra round. But now we are seeing things that they're doing differently, right? They're starting to try to have it at two different courses, one open, one wooded. There's 5 rounds. But again, it's like in the middle of the tournament cycle, doesn't really make that sense. But it's just weird how everyone was on board that Worlds is the most important. Worlds is so important. And then when you say, hey, no one's really going to care about this tournament because the most important tournament's coming up, everyone's like, what are you talking about? You're an
How dare
idiot.
you?
It's like, how do we forget about Worlds? What's going on?
Yeah, Dustin, returning champ, back again.
Indeed, and as a non-foundation staff member, I will also say that having two majors next to each other is stupid. So there you go. Direct your hate towards a non-interested party.
Yeah, it's not just
Also, here's the
payroll
wild
department.
one. FPO's done with majors midway through the year.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's crazy, except for the one that counts in our heart.
In our heart, throw pink will
right.
always be a major. That is
When was
true.
the first major was what, April?
Yeah.
Yeah, U.S. Women's.
It's a
Our
short
Champions
major
Cup.
season, April through July.
Champions Cup or U.S. Women's first?
Champions
I think it
Cup.
was Champions Cup
So
first.
literally Champions Cup to August 1st, they have 4 majors. From
That's
like
right.
end of April to beginning of August, there's 4 majors for the women.
It's got to be
wow.
efficient, get them out the way, man.
That's crazy.
You
That's crazy.
better get hot at the right
Kristen
time.
goes on one putting slump. She's gonna miss all 4 majors.
And yeah, like I said, Hannah is joining us again as well.
Yep, I'm excited to be back. I'm really excited for these topics because this weekend was electric. Even if the course was really easy, and even if it's a major back to back with Worlds, it was still really fun to watch. So I'm excited to talk about it.
Yeah, let's dive in. Seems like everybody has got a lot to say about it. So let's get started. So the European Disc Golf Festival seemed to be a well-liked and well-run event, but some complained the course was too easy. Was the course too simple? And if so, does it make sense to have a birdie or die style major, since it's a natural part of our sport and does happen periodically throughout the tour schedule? Obviously, we see these events. I would say a lot of people have even grown to accept their occasional play on tour. So does it make sense to have this kind of major? Brodie, what do you think?
So I'm all for majors having some sort of identity. I think that's a very important thing for you to kind of keep some sort of history, prestige to the major, something that you can build on year after year, and something that you are looking forward to that specific tournament, and something that separates itself from the other majors. I think that's very important. I think that's something that if you look at other individual sports like tennis and golf, they do those things. So why doesn't disc golf? I'm not quite sure. So if this wants to be, again, I didn't realize this at the time. European Open is actually owned by, I think it's Spin 18. So I think this is where they have to kind of maybe come up with a clever way of saying like the Euro Open or the championship in Europe. They got to come up with some different name, because you can't call a major the European Disc Golf Festival when it's not at a festival. Like, it wouldn't make sense to have this major in some random place, right? So that's the first thing. You got to come up with the name of the major so it holds weight throughout the time. But if they want to turn this into the birdie or die major, because that does add different type of pressure. That pressure of, I can't mess up. I have to, from day one, come out and shoot a great round. That is a different style of pressure. And if they want to have one birdie or die major, I'm okay with it. Is it going to be my most exciting that I can't wait to watch round 1 through the round 4? No, but it will make it for an exciting finish, which we got at this one.
Yeah, sometimes the track meets can be a good time. Hunter, what do you think?
Yeah, no, look, I think that first off, the venue and all of that stuff, like, I've seen so many players post about the way they were treated, the venue, so on and so forth, and people are using that to defend the course. The venue and the course are two different things. So because a player says they were treated like a professional athlete and they loved it, doesn't necessarily mean they think the course is the greatest design of all time, right? Like, there's two different things there. Secondarily, we have heard from many well-known Pro Tour players that they don't like to have to think. They want to just throw a disc and let it land where it lands, try to get as close to the basket as often as possible. They don't like a lot of OB. They don't like a lot of carries. They just want to, I see a basket, I throw to it. So of course they're going to like this, because that's exactly what we had here. So do I think that a birdie or die style major can make sense? Yes, but I think, as Brodie was kind of pointing out, that needs to be the major's identity, in my opinion. And with the majors coming back to Estonia, I believe it's like they're going to be kind of trading on and off with the European Open, if I remember correctly. Kind of, I don't know if it's every other year, but it's somewhere like that. Like, they've signed out through like 2028 or 2029, somewhere in there. The problem I have is the one they're rotating it with doesn't have the same identity. So it's not like the European major, which whatever they end up calling it, the European major is always the birdie or die, more the roots of disc golf. You have to have touch to play out there, all of that. I can get behind that 100%. But when it's just like we get it here and there, it's going to feel out of place. I think it's a phenomenal course for a normal Pro Tour event. I just think the major, if they're going to go that route, that's got to be the whole identity. And I don't see UC and the European Open team going to that identity.
Yeah, no doubt. Dustin, what are your thoughts?
I don't think it has any place being a major, no, because the reality is majors should be hard. They're the most prestigious events that we have in our circuit. And you can be hard while being in the woods. You can be hard while being out in the open with like Mandos and forced carries and stroke and distance and islands and all these different things. So there's different ways to be difficult and still set yourself apart and have an identity. Personally speaking, if I'm running a major and my major's known as the birdie or die major, that's a sucky, I think, thing to have around you. I don't think you want that. I think that kind of belittles your major in comparison to the rest. I'd personally hate that. And look, when we come to this event, I think there are lots of positives. The infrastructure was great. The culture's cool. The big crowds. I actually did like the opening hole and the big stage and the big teeing area. I think they had some things going for them that made it great. But in MPO, yeah, it did score too easily. I mean, pretty much every round you had 11 holes or more scoring 45% or higher birdie rates. Like, that's ridiculous. And then to make it worse, you're barely bogeying on like most of these holes. Like, most of the holes were like 15% or less bogey rate. So it's like, it's just all pars and birdies. And that's just not what I want in a major. I will say for FPO, the course did seem to work out better, scored pretty well. I think maybe for that it was good. But then also I just hate some of the redundancy in this course. Like, holes 8 and 17 were the exact same tunnel gauntlet shot. There was like a difference of 36 feet of distance. And that was pretty much it. And I get that there was OB out there that people could catch and that would get you in trouble. Sure. But other than those gauntlet holes, it was pretty easy to keep your disc in balance if you play conservative. And with the par fours being so short, you could play conservative and still birdie the hole. And if you mess up a shot, you could still birdie the hole. So I think there's just too many forgettable holes, generally too short, generally too easy. And I'm just not a big fan of it.
Yeah, it is interesting. It did obviously score quite differently in FPO, but the redundancy was something I noticed that I didn't like. The identical holes was very weird. Hannah, round it out for us. What were your thoughts on the EDGF?
Yeah, so first, I love every time they play at this venue. I think it's phenomenal. And like Hunter and Brodie both pointed out, like you always hear good reports from the players. It's an event that I want to go to. Like if I could just go to Estonia for this, I would go in a heartbeat. But I also agree that there's a little bit of an identity crisis, right? I don't mind this being a birdie and die major. I don't mind that it's an easy course. And there's really nothing notable about the course because the venue and the overall atmosphere kind of makes up for that. But it does lack the prestige, and it's going to be hard to maintain that, like Hunter pointed out, if it's rotating with the European Open, which is a completely different venue and a completely different vibe. But I will say, I don't think it's as easy or as far off of other courses as we think it is, statistically speaking. If we look at the European Open last year, the average strokes behind the leader for the top 20 was about 16 strokes. And this year at the EDGF, it was about 15, which speaks to good scoring separation. But I think we're also noticing that the par really doesn't matter when you have people scoring so hot. So I don't mind the style, of course, for a major at all. And I think that there's something fun about the fact that in theory, someone could shoot 18 down and a simple 10 down round is not going to be good enough. Paul Macbeth even said that he was 4 strokes back going into the final round this weekend, and he was thinking he needed to shoot at least 15 down to even be in contention. And that is absolutely wild that we're at that place. So I don't mind that it's an easy course, but I do agree that over time it will kind of have an identity crisis with the European Open.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. The birdie or die thing is, I think it's a different watching style. Like Brodie was saying, like you do kind of have this anxiousness watching. If you're watching somebody try to chase down the lead, especially knowing that like if they make par, their round's kind of over. But I think it just depends on how the leaderboard shakes up, because if you get people that run away, it can get pretty monotonous pretty quickly. You really need a track race where a lot of players are towards the top to make it exciting. So I don't know. I think there can be some serious downside with it, but it is part of the sport, at least at this point. I think the Pro Tour has shown that they're trying to move away from it a little bit more, but I think most of you hit on it. The biggest problem is just identity. That's what matters to these majors. We can care less about a lot more things than if they would just stick to something. Even if the major stunk, at least if it was the same for 15 years, we'd know what we're getting. It's just weird to have it back and forth. The PDGA just slaps that major title on whatever they want, really.
Well,
and it's
I think a big problem for the PDGA is that they don't own. Well, really, they don't own the 2 majors that had the best identity, which was the European Open that they're now rotating with the European Disc Golf Festival and USDGC. And so,
bingo.
Like the fact that the European Open, I guess, is a very similar thing to United States Disc Golf Championship, where like if someone else were to run it, they can't because US Disc Golf owns that name. And I guess that makes sense that Discmania and Spin 18 own the European Open title. But like I think that's the problem there, is just that the PDGA like almost doesn't have control and can't force their own majors to form an identity. I don't know.
It's a weird conundrum. All right, well, let's talk about one of these winners here. Calvin Heimberg, major champion. So Calvin Heimberg has finally won his major for years. I want to have to ask the question, is there any asterisks for winning such a unique major without any history? We did just talk about this venue. Or is that just ridiculous nitpicking? And then also, how many spots does this victory jump him up the all-time list for you? Because obviously it was really the only feather in his cap that he needed to join the ranks of the elite as far as that extra accomplishment that a lot of people value. So what are your thoughts on this win, Hunter?
Well, first off, is there any asterisk? No. Mainly a few reasons. One, this, sometimes people might look at it, oh, this is in Europe, so they think weaker field. Satmando, this is actually the strongest field of the year so far, mainly because everyone's over there gearing up for Worlds. So you have all of the top players over there. Not to mention, even though it was a more birdie or die style course, which we're not used to seeing, it did produce a pretty chalky top 10. So I believe it's the top 7 players are arguably 7 of the best players in the world, if I remember correctly. So Calvin also was going toe to toe with the guys you would expect him to go toe to toe with. So when you're looking at those two factors, then I think that already gets rid of the nitpicking. But if we also want to be nitpicking as, oh, there's not much history. Well, when Worlds came to Lynchburg, or when Worlds goes to other places, there's not history there either. It's just the title that comes along with it. So can we really say there's not history just because the title? That doesn't make sense to me either. So there should absolutely be no asterisk next to Calvin Heinberg's major or Silva Saarinen's major title here. Now, how many spots does this jump up? All determines on, or all bases on how much weight you actually give majors. Because if you just are looking at wins and you give majors some weight, then honestly, it probably doesn't jump him up that much, because like the players ahead of him, in my opinion, looking at the Nate Dosses of the world, the Dave Feldbergs, Barry Schultz, are players who like he has close to the wins of all overall, not the Barry Schultz or Dave Feldberg, but like the Nate Dosses. But we're looking at Worlds and USDGC titles. So the only player in my mind that people might have had him ahead would be like the Nico LaCastros, the Nico of the world, maybe even the Will Schustrick, where it's like all they had on him were majors because he has the Elite Series title wins over them. So I think a major might bump him up there, but I think it more just solidifies his legacy, but doesn't really move him up the all-time list, in my opinion.
Okay. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. Those are definitely some names that he would be floating around with. Dustin, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm not going to give it an asterisk either. I mean, for all the faults we gave this major for being an easy course, it is still a major at the end of the day. It still had the strongest field of players possible. They're all playing the same course under the same conditions, and you can only play the course and the players in front of you, and you can't blame Calvin for that. We didn't have any weird situations where like a round got canceled or someone had to play against really adverse weather and other people didn't. I mean, it was all pretty similar when it's all said and done. And yeah, there is a certain pressure that gets added to a major because it is just a major, and there is a pressure of I can't make any mistakes. I have to birdie every hole. I can't slip up, or someone's going to catch me. So there is going to be that where I still think it has value there. And also just for Calvin particularly, this guy's been such a consistent player for such a long time. He's been winning at least one tournament pretty much every year since 2019, except for the COVID year. And so now his first win of 2025 is a major. He was at many people's, eyes, the one guy who, hadn't won a major yet that should, you'll throw AB and some other names in that category too, but he was like kind of the main one considering how consistent he's been and how long he's been that consistent. Now, sure, it's not going to have the same prestige as other majors wins. Of course not. Like Worlds, just by name alone, always gets the most prestige. USDGC is always going to be super prestigious for people just because of this course and the history and the traditions that are around that. So yeah, it's not going to have the same value, I think, in a lot of people's minds because of that. It's almost like Champions Cup, where they kind of lost their identity too because it used to be the wooden major. Now we don't know what the heck it's going to be. So yeah, I'm not going to take anything off for Calvin. As far as my all-time list, it doesn't really move him that much because I personally already had him very high due to just how he's been like a top 10 player for like 6-7 years consistently. Yeah. Hardly ever finishes outside the top 10, and he has a lot of wins. So yeah, the major gives him a little bit of something that he didn't have for a while, but I think he kind of sits roughly around the same spot.
Yeah, with him, there's definitely a lot of eye test versus accolade stack up, no doubt about that. Hannah, where do you rank Calvin now? What do you think about this win? How does it qualify for you?
Yes, I agree with Dustin and Hunter. Like, there's no asterisk. I think that's getting really nitpicky. I think if you don't count this major, then you can't count Champions Cup or the Japan Open or any of the other unique majors we've had. So the reality is, at the end of the day, like Dustin said, it's a major, and the fans and the pros, they like the event, they like the venue, and Estonia gives it their all, even though it's an easy course. Now, this event does have a little bit of prestigious feeling because of the location, even though it doesn't have the history. But for the all-time list and how he moves up, I kind of looked into this a little bit, and there's a list that he just joined with 15 other names on it, where they of all one major first single major winners. Pros like Kyle Klein, Nate Sexton, Big Germ, Corey Ellis are all on that list. So I think of those 16 total people, he's probably at the top, just given how he's been performing recently. I think if we look at the names like across the all-time list and we're focusing on the majors, then I think he moves from somewhere in the 30s to up to like the top 20s, because there's only now 18 people who have more major wins than him, with those being people with 2 majors or more, all the way up to Ken Climo. So no, I don't think there's an asterisk with this win. I think it was a very legitimate major win, and he deserves his title. I mean, that finishing putt alone was like, give him an award for that, because that was an awesome finish. But I think he does move up quite a bit in the leaderboard, especially amongst the ranks of those who are single major winners too.
Yeah, there's a lot of players in that category for sure. It takes a few more to maybe start jumping some of those other names, but so you're saying in your 20s right now is where you have them. Okay, Brodie,
Yeah,
do you agree? Is that where you'd place him as well?
No, I think I go a little bit higher, but I'll talk about that before I talk about the asterisk, whether it should be one or not. Because I think when you're, looking back at players, the first thing when you're doing these all-time lists, the first thing that jumps out at a lot of people is, were they able to win the big one, right? Were they actually able to win a championship? And when you are a great, but you never were able to win one, it always slides you down the further you go, because you're going to have more and more players after you come in, win championships. So you always feel like you're kind of getting pushed down the list. And I think that could have been Calvin's case here if he never would have won a major, of where he would have been one of the best to ever have played the sport that have never won a major, where now he's in that category. I think as of right now, I think he jumps all the guys that are on the 1 spot. I think he jumps everyone that's on the 2 spot just based on his performance that he's had over the last 5 years or so. I think it's tough to jump anyone outside of that. He's probably going to need to get a couple more majors or just a longer career of, a lot of Elite Series wins and all that. Now, as far as the asterisks go, it's really interesting because I haven't really actually dug into this before, but UDisc has a really interesting graph where they show all the major championships in what year. And Worlds is obviously the one that's has the most history. It started all the way back in 1982 with Duval winning that first one. Then it goes to the US Disc Golf Championship. That one goes all the way back to 1999. Then you have the European Open, which is interesting because sometimes it happens and sometimes it doesn't. And that one seemed to be like the third biggest one. And then you got Champions Cup, as happened the last 4 years and is starting to gain some more prestige. Now, what could happen with this tournament is it could end up being like a Japan Open. It could be something that is around a couple times and then all of a sudden disappears. But I'm looking at it too, like the Aussie Open. That's not a major that we talk about very often. Kona Piste, the only reason we bring that ever up is because Eagle won it. And it's kind of like, what the heck was that? But then there's like European Masters, Scandinavian Open, European Masters again, Copenhagen Open. These are all majors, guys. Stockholm
Players
Open,
Championship or something.
the Players Cup.
Yeah.
These are all the PDGA Championship.
Yeah, they were throwing it around for a while there.
So this is never going to like go away as a major. He's always going to be on the one major list.
Yeah.
The only asterisk would be like, if this goes away, people are going to kind of be like, wait, what was the major he won again?
It's totally because like we just talked about how like we now know right now in this day and age, it had an insanely strong field. But for all we now, in a lot of those past majors like the Japan, the Aussie Open, we know those fields were not super strong because players weren't even traveling as much. There was like usually 2 to 3 like good players at them. But, years from now, the Calvin fans will probably remember because he won this major, they'll be like, no, everybody was there. But it will be one that might, if it doesn't continue happening, you might glance at it and group it in with those other ones and be like, ooh, it was kind of one of those random majors. But I do think because Calvin won it and because at this moment, at least it seems so big for his career and he's such a big player in the sport, it's going to be harder to forget because it's kind of a huge, crux of his career.
But like 40 years from now, if it's the only major he's won and there was only 3
the old heads
European Disc Golf Festival champion majors, it's going to be one where it's kind of like, what?
Yeah.
Let me ask you this though: they
got to get a better name?
Is there coverage out there you can watch these Japan Opens or Australian Opens?
Yes,
Australian for sure.
The Japan one's wild because they had to throw discs that were under 160 grand.
There's been TV coverage of the Japan Open. A lot of
Is
times
it like easily accessible though?
Yeah,
on YouTube. I think.
Okay.
Yeah,
I just wonder if that might be a factor. Is the fact that like it's harder to actually even go back and look at those if you wanted to.
It won't be as easy, I guess. But
the tough part for like the Aussie Open and Japan Open and stuff is there was enough good players and they beat the field most of the time by enough that like the lead card looked like every other lead card from back then because that was really the only way we watched coverage.
Usually,
and it was like
3 to 4 like
you
good players.
had the Aussie Open, you had Paul McBeth, you had Eagle McMahon, you had Ricky Wysocki. I don't remember it might have been Manabu Kajiyama, who back then was actually competitive. But like they were all on lead card. So when you looked at that versus lead card of like Texas State's, it wasn't like a jarring difference. The main difference was who was fighting for the like third, fourth spot. But I mean, to be fair to the 2015 Aussie Open, that was pretty much every tournament. It was like, well, is Paul going to win or is Ricky going to win?
Right.
And if not,
Yeah.
that was it.
But my point was mainly like, I don't know anything about the Aussie Open because it hasn't happened in over a decade.
Yeah.
Imagine if this tournament doesn't happen in 20, 30 years and we're talking about the all-time greats.
Yeah.
And we're like, people are going to be like, wait, what? The European Disc Golf Festival? That doesn't, that alone,
Especially if it
doesn't sound like a major.
Especially if they do find the identity for the other, like if we do end up with 4 majors, like let's say European Open, Champions Cup, Worlds, USDGC, lock in like 3 years from now, and it's been that way for now 20 years and 23 years in the future, you're like, what the heck are these fake majors? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because all you know is these 4. And you're like, the European Disc Golf Festival, is that what the European Open used to be called? No, it just happened twice. That's weird.
Yeah.
I have a question for y'all, actually.
That's the only issue that might happen down the road.
I have a question real quick, and you can cut this out if you want to later, but obviously, like, USDGC is never going to be Worlds, right? Like, it's always just going to be USDGC. It's its own thing. It has its own tradition. It has its own prestige value. You're never going to see USDGC host Worlds. Don't you find it kind of odd that the European Open is holding Worlds? Shouldn't it just be its own thing? And so, because especially now that they've had the Monster, like that's a great balance. Like you had the Beast, you had the Monster, you had 2 really good courses. You got the Woods, you got the more open park style courses coming together. Like that should just be its own thing, in my opinion. Like it should have never been Worlds. It should just be the European Open. And if you want to have a Worlds in Europe, it should be somewhere else, in my opinion.
Well, what it boils down to is the PDGA can't run a World Championship. They have to have volunteers. They have to have boots on the ground.
They have to have UC Maresma.
And so that really limits the amount of places they can go. That's the issue. But yes, to answer your question, I think like 20 or 30 years from now, I think that probably gets
because we were just starting to be able to get the European Open every year. Like we were finally there. We were finally getting consistent European Open. Now we just lost it to a Worlds one year.
It
so
did
weird.
Feel like we were so close to having the normalcy.
4 really good majors.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's move on to FPO side of things. Got to talk about Kristen Lott again, because it wasn't just the woes she's been dealing with, or else we probably wouldn't just keep bringing this up. We saw a new bottom, a new low for her putting. So she's officially lost the putter after a shocking display this past weekend, notably the meltdown on 17, missing a couple putts from inside of 10 feet. So I want to know, could we actually be witnessing a mental block that could plague her long term on the putting green, or do you see this as a small bump in the road? Because, you know, there could be a real argument made that like this is not something that's just going to go away. There's been a kind of downward spiral here, and you know, everybody knows with sports it can be tough to control what's between the ears. So Dustin, what do you think we're looking at here?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a just, you know, compounding spiral downward over time at this point now. And it stinks because she's still leading the field in a lot of throwing stats. Like she's still throwing the disc very well. Her Circle 2 putting performance on average this year is about the same as last year as well. It really is just the C1X putting where she has plummeted. I mean, she was 6th last year in C1X, an 80% type person. Pretty good. This year, 22nd in C1X putting, 72%. And that is the difference between her winning and not winning, because she's still putting herself in contention with how well she's throwing the disc, but she's now not winning because she can't putt. And we've seen it all year long. But I think the most damning was, you know, the final round of PCS where she really struggled to get going, the entirety of Crocal where she couldn't get going at all. And then what made this one even worse is it felt like she had shook off the demons. Like at the end of day 3, she had a 3-stroke lead and she went 80% from C1X and she was 2 for 4 from Circle 2. I'm like, all right, like we got it. We've done it. But then the final day, she loses by 2 strokes, 44% from C1X. She 3-putts hole 11, which most people are going to forget about because of what happened on 17. And then, 17, it's damning because her stats in C1X were so bad, but I was not watching her airball like bullseye putts. And now we're watching her airball bullseye putts or barely hitting the chains. She's also changing how she putts. Like she wasn't straddling all the time anymore. She was doing some staggered putts. It's like, man, this is just so tough. And as far as whether or not this is going to be a long-term issue or not, I don't know, because we've only seen it really going on for the last couple of months. I think she probably should have taken a break at some point, but she decided to grind through because it was a European stretch of events. Obviously, this event was like on her home soil, so I get it. But after Worlds, she needs some time off because she needs to kind of figure out, what is this? Is it a mental thing? Is it a physical thing? Is it both? And how can I go about addressing it? And I think that that has to happen here soon.
Yeah, never a fun place to be in your game when you're not sure what's going to happen. Hannah, how did you perceive it? What do you think's going on?
Well, yeah. So first of all, to Dustin's point, though, I don't know when she's going to get a break because 4 days after Worlds ends, she's off in China for the World Games for like
Oh
10 days.
yeah.
So we'll see what happens there. But no, I think this is a lot of the mental side of it. I think most of us can agree, like putting is a lot of mental more than it's physical. It's a very simple motion at the end of the day, but your head gets very noisy and it's very hard to concentrate on those moments in when the pressure's on. And I think she has a lot of pressure on herself to win, especially in Estonia, because it's technically kind of her hometown, but that almost becomes like a disadvantage. There's just this pressure to not let anyone down. And I think that some of us relate to that on some level, but she's the Estonia version of Michael Jordan or Tiger Woods. And that's a huge mantle to carry. So even though her mental game in the past used to be strong and her putting used to be excellent, everyone ultimately has their breaking point or a point where it just becomes too much pressure and too much weight. And I wonder if we're starting to see that a little bit. I don't think it'll be a long-term problem, but right now this is just this cycle she's stuck in. And like Dustin pointed out, unless she can get a break, she's probably not going to be able to get over this very much. Um, if we look in the past, she struggled and she's made great comebacks between injury and other just mental struggles that she's had with putting or throws or whatever else. But she also never really played phenomenally at this venue. In 2023, she had a 16-stroke lead going into the final round at this event, and she won by 3, but she shot +8 in the final round. And that's not nothing. Like, that's important to know. And last year, she was finished in 8th, 8 strokes off of Missy Gannon's win. So I just don't think she's playing that well at home. So it's possible this becomes a long-term issue, but I think this will ultimately just be a blip on her season and her career, and she'll get over it soon.
Okay. Brodie, you agree? Is just a blip, or are we buckled in for maybe some bad play going forward?
Well, I'll say it is interesting kind of hearing a lot of people talk about the amount of pressure that she had playing in front of a home crowd, because we often hear the exact opposite. We often hear people talk about how the home crowd propelled them. We also hear people talk about that are maybe underdogs that were able to achieve something great because of the crowd fueling them from whatever reason it is. So I think it is interesting how sometimes we change the narrative to fit the story versus I think most people would like to play in front of a home crowd. I think most people would like to sleep in their own bed. I think most people would like to play a big tournament in an area that they're comfortable with. You look at other sports, teams are going to perform way better at home than away. And so I think it is interesting. I have seen that narrative. Like, there was so much pressure. And it's like, I think sometimes people just fit their own narrative to a story when in fact, this should have been the easiest major for her to win, all things are considered. Now, when it comes to the putting, there is 100% an issue here. I just went and had to watch hole 1 because someone was like, make sure you check out what hole 1 was. I don't know if you guys woke up at 2:00 in the morning to watch hole 1. It was like a 13-foot putt and hit like the outside ring of chains into the cage. Just there's no confidence in the putt right now. But the thing that was most shocking to me is something that we have talked about Kristen for a while, is how confident and how she can kind of stay in the moment. And on hole 17, what we saw was something that you would see from an amateur, someone that got embarrassed for missing a putt so close that is just trying to get out of there. They're just trying to get out of there as fast as possible, where a professional would have been like, oh my gosh, what just happened? Let me take a couple deep breaths. Let me figure out what's going on and let me make this next putt. And we just saw a completely different style from her that we've never seen before, which I think is kind of a red flag. And the other thing that we've talked about on this show a lot is Kristen always was the person when she was in the lead, she's just like, I'm not going to make mistakes because I know everyone around me is going to make mistakes. Silva is not that person. Silva is not going to gift you a major championship or gift you a tournament. We saw that early on. Silva's beaten those demons, and now she is going out there and taking it. And I think that's going to be an issue moving forward, is Kristen can't just play safe and play to hopefully have other people around her mess up.
Yeah, having Silva there knocking on the door definitely ups that pressure. Certainly did in this event. Hunter, what is your perception? What do you think we're going to see from Kristen moving forward?
I would love to believe the hometown pressure narrative or the European narrative or any type of narrative that's short term. But my problem is none of that makes you airball 10-foot putts. That makes you mess up tee shots. That makes you yank, have the issues we saw her having with the forehand at, I believe, PCS. That stuff, absolutely. I can get behind that. But you don't play great off the tee, play a phenomenal upshot game. I mean, I think she said Krokel was the best she's ever thrown the disc, if I remember correctly. You don't do that and then miss 10-foot putts. Like, if you're under pressure all the time. You're not only under pressure on the 10-foot putts. That's actually where you're under the least amount of pressure. Because, like, finally, I just got to tap this thing in. I've done it. So I unfortunately can't buy that. And I do have to think this is something going on between the ears. And I do have to wonder if maybe it's an internal pressure. She is in a contract year. She did sign a very large, lucrative 4-year deal that was based on her being essentially the GOAT, essentially the greatest current FPO player, and not essentially, she is or was. And I do have to wonder, like, as you have the emergence of Silva and Holland and Missy, and all of a sudden what she was used to of I just walk into a weekend, I do what I do, and I win, started to kind of go away. We have the slip up at the Open at Austin. She isn't winning majors right now. And all of a sudden her putter disappears in her contract year. That would be keeping me up at night. I don't know if that's keeping her up at night. I think the only way this gets fixed quick is if she switches putters, because when you're missing through this flow, you got to do something that is just like feels fresh, feels new. I think it's time. She needs a beaded putter in her hand, and that'll fix the 10-footer. She might suck at 30, but all she's got to do is make inside 15 to win, and that I know from experience that'll fix the 10-footers.
Is this a conspiracy from Latitude because Isaac will not push the peak anymore? They need someone to do it. They're like, listen, Kristen, the peak could be your savior. The new putter that they just put out.
Just slap a Band-Aid on it.
Exactly.
Yeah, the contract year thing I think is very valid. I think if you were like starting to feel the struggles coming on, and one thing that would, if you had just signed a huge contract, you're like, well, I got time to figure this out. But if you felt pressure to like, I need to take something to the table with my agent this offseason, then you would feel like you need to fix it right away.
She's also in her post, her cryptic post has mentioned a lot of like stuff going on off the course.
Yeah.
So you never know. I mean, that could mean literally anything, but there is the disc golf manufacturer coming out of Estonia. Who's behind that? Is she a part tied to that and Latitude doesn't like it? Who knows?
I think though too, like something that Paige went through recently in the last couple of years. I think she's
at music festivals.
I think that idea, and even Paul Macbeth kind of had to go through it a little bit. I think he's kind of come around. He's dealt with it pretty decently now, of where you have everyone telling you you're the best, and you go out there and you're winning all the time. And then all of a sudden a new crop of players come in and you're not doing it. And you feel like I'm not really doing that much different, but other people are coming in. I think that transition is a tough one. We saw Paul and, like I said, Paige go through that transition. I think she's going maybe through that transition now too, a little bit, with someone like a Silva that is now pushing the pace a little bit and not making mistakes and having great final rounds. And now it's like, maybe you have to do a little extra work on the greens when you didn't have to. Maybe you have to practice a little bit more with whatever, right? I don't know. I think there is something to be said about that, because we, for the longest time, we're saying Kristen's the best, no one's close. And now we're seeing this season, well, there's other people out there that can win too.
Yeah. Certainly all eyes will be on her during Worlds. Every time there's a short putt. I mean, and that's the problem. The putting issues are so difficult, because now every time there's a short one, it's going to be in the back of your head.
I want an Evelina Kristen showdown at Worlds, where it's just coming down the stretch. It's like, no, why are you guys walking? This is only a 12-footer. Stay close.
I do wonder, especially now that she does seem to have lost confidence in her putt and it seems a little bit broken. I mean, even this past weekend, we saw like towards the end of the round, she started going into more of a staggered stance for some of the putts. But I wonder how much practice putting she actually does, because I think it was in a practice round before Crocal with MDG Media, someone was asking her about practicing, and she says she only practices usually 1 round a day because she's been doing that since she had her elbow surgery. And so I wonder if she doesn't feel like she can comfortably or safely for her body practice putting more, and if that's not helping either.
Well, it's also
You-
if you go practice punting and you're missing them all, then you're just compounding the lack of confidence. Like it just gets worse. I can't even make them in my backyard now. Like,
As
it's
someone
just
who's,
worse.
I was gonna say, as someone who's been in Kristen and Evelina's shoes,
Uh-huh.
practice putting, you're phenomenal. You don't miss from 15 feet.
Yeah, I would
You're
imagine that
disgusting.
Kristen Tatar will step into a garage right now and rattle off 110 footers.
She
and
could
not
come into
miss
our
any.
putting league and probably go like 90% from and like
Yeah.
rattling them off down. We'd be like, she's the greatest putter of all time. It's the you can't practice tournament pressure. That's why you need to do disc. You need an
Yeah.
inside 15-foot disc.
I think the more crushing thing is how well she played day 3 too, and then
Maybe
only
putt
for
with
it
a
to fall apart
driver.
the fun around.
Yeah,
I
that could be
agree.
something. The ultimate nonchalant play,
grace.
bag on driver putt.
Good point.
You guys know the last time she won at like a full field event?
Earlier
Full field
this
event.
year in the States, I think.
Was it this year? I mean,
Yeah.
and
I
Brodie
know
saying
she-
full field event makes me think it was last year.
I feel like it was at the
No.
beginning of this year.
April 4th.
Okay, it was
April
this
4th. She won Kona Peak,
MCO,
but
right?
I'm not counting that. But April 4th, she won Music City Open.
Yeah.
Right.
That's
that was
kind of
where-
crazy because
That was
she's
where
had
Silva had the upshot hit that hit the tree on 17.
Yeah, that's kind of crazy because she's
Playoffs.
had a great season. Like if you look at it, she has a great season, but not
Yeah.
on Kristen standards because she just hasn't won these tournaments.
No, she's only finished outside the top 2. What, twice with a 5th and 6th? Something
So
like
it's
that.
just one of those things where she's almost kind of set the bar to where she needs to be so high that when she's not winning all the time,
It's a
people are like, "What's
very-
going on?"
But also, we wouldn't
Hey-
be talking. It's less about that and more about like we wouldn't talk about it if she was just coming up short. It's that she's missing 10-foot putts. Like
Yeah, that's the big
at the end
thing.
of the day, like we didn't care this year when she was taking like less first but a bunch of seconds. It's like whatever. But you're missing 10-foot putts. We're going to talk about it. 'cause it's
Something's
like,
going on.
Yeah, there's something going on.
It is the Paul Macbeth, Paige Pierce situation where it's like you build your brand on dominance and you can't slip. Because now if you slip, like Hannah Blomroos, who knows how many 10-foot putts she might have missed at the European Disc Golf Festival? No one knows. No one's, Evelina
cares.
wasn't even really on coverage. Like we don't know, right? I just thought of that Hannah Blomroos putt at the old what was that? The other festival, European Disc Golf something.
I'm not counting
championship.
that as a putt. I can't count that as a
I just
putt.
went and took it out of her hand. But I'm saying like that, we don't even bat an eye at it, right? Just in one ear, out the other, because her brand's not Kristen's. Like I think that's the big thing. It's like even when Evelina was doing it, it still didn't feel the same because it wasn't
Right.
Kristen. That's
just
the whole
different.
thing. Is like her brand was built on not doing exactly what she's doing.
Yeah.
So now it makes you question everything.
Well, let's talk about what we're headed into next because we have one off week and then we're headed right back into another
Oh,
major. a big one.
we're already
Well, we
talking
can't
about
move
another
on yet,
major.
Trev.
Yep,
What?
We're already talking about another major.
that's right.
That
What?
doesn't make sense.
Yeah, this time we got world championships. So I want to know, does this past weekend serve as a huge clue as to which players are informed to win major tournaments? Or do you think because the course and the grandeur of Worlds could lead to entirely different leaderboards than we just saw? Because obviously we are getting a different venue, different course. It's not going to be quite as birdie or die. So yeah, does it like, well, these players were able to win in the big moments, they're still favorites going into the next week, or are things going to change just based on the different course and being a couple weeks in the future? Hannah, what do you think?
Yeah, so when I first read the question, my initial thought was, of course, Worlds. Like, we're going to see a totally different leaderboard, and it's going to be, like, so exciting and weird. But then I looked at the leaderboards from this past weekend again, and I was like, oh, no, I don't think it'll be that different, actually. So sure, there were a few surprises. Jaden Rye and Luke Humphreys both finished in the top 10 this past week, and several notable names did finish outside of the top 30, with pros like Adam Hammes even missing the cut. But it's very possible that at least half of this weekend's top 10 will be in the top 10 at Worlds as well. And in FPO, it will likely be a similar story. Even though Evelina and Missy both missed the top 5, and Kat Murch was a notable name who missed the cut in FPO, this weekend's leaderboards was filled with people who know what it's like to perform under Worlds pressure. I don't doubt that it could be a Kristen Silva battle again. I would love to see it, or with Evelina even. But this time we'll just have to see if Kristen can handle that pressure or if someone else is going to push for their first world title or a repeat world title. And we got to remember, it's 5 rounds. You eliminate a lot of variability that it takes for lower tier players to win when you add the extra rounds. It's a marathon, it's not a sprint. So you can stumble and still be all right for the most part. But if you fall flat on your face with a totally awful round, then that's going to put you out of it.
Yeah, certainly with the 5 rounds, we're not it's hard to imagine getting anything quite as sprint like as we just did. Brodie, what are you looking to see at Worlds? Think it'll be similar?
Well, I got to talk to 2 guys that performed pretty good at this last one, Calvin and AB. And I asked them like what is going to be some challenges at Worlds that you didn't have to do? Like, what are the differences? And they just said it's night and day. They said there's tons of shots that they just didn't have to throw at this past tournament. AB was kind of talking about how and Calvin even were talking about how they throw rollers. I didn't see one roller off the tee this past week. And then the other thing that was completely missing from this past week was scrambling. Scrambling was just like non-existent. And we're going to see that at the Monster 100%. So I think with that being said, we're going to be seeing completely different style of disc golf at Worlds. However, if you look at the people at the top, these names like Ricky, Paul, Calvin, Gannon, AB, if I pick those people up and drop them at any course in the world, am I thinking that, oh, it's going to change? No, like those are the best players in the world. They're going to probably play the best at any course. Now, could I see some guys that didn't perform this past week move up in leaderboards? 100%, because this past week, if you were off, if your game just wasn't there, you were going to be nowhere near the top of the leaderboard. Where now, if you're maybe some of your tee shots are a little funky, if you're scrambling really well, you can still save pars and still be in it. So I think we're going to see some new names on top of in the leaderboard. But we're not going to see any of these top guys. I don't think any of these top guys are going to fall out. I think we're going to see all those guys still battling for this thing.
Yeah, definitely less of a sprint in that regard too. Not only 5 rounds, but you don't have to have the pedal to the metal the entire time to have a chance to win. Hunter, do you think we'll see something similar as well?
Well, I think on MPO side, kind of to Brodie's point, it's hard to imagine we'll see a much different looking top of the leaderboard, only because the 7 guys at the top, I mean, it's Calvin, Gannon, Isaac, Paul, AB, Niklas, Ricky. If I gave you a bet of the winner of Worlds is coming off that list versus the field, you're probably picking the list. Like, I think it's pretty, you're most likely one of those guys about to win Worlds. So I don't necessarily think it's going to be, and probably we're reading probably 3 to 5 of the top 5 in that 7. I do think that there could be a few of them fall down. I mean, if we look at Calvin and AB last year at the European Open, which they played 2 rounds at the Monster, 2 rounds at the Beast, they struggled. I mean, I believe, let me find them. Calvin lost by 22 and AB lost by 25 out there across 4 rounds. So they really struggled. Calvin, it seems like the Monster is what shot him out of it. But it's also 5 rounds. It's a whole year later. Those guys could just light the courses on fire. I think in FPO originally I was like, oh, well, I do think, going to these courses, is that going to kind of knock Silva out of it? Maybe we'll bring Evelina in a little more. But if you look at it last year, we had Kristen win at 7 under, Silva at 6 under, and then Evelina at even. Evelina here was in 8th place. So I think if you look again, if I gave you Silva, Kristen, Ella, Henna, Holland, Val, Missy, Evelina, there's a few players in there that you're probably not expecting to be near the top. But again, I think the world champion is coming off of that list. So I think that the players that are hot, and I don't think there's anything that really surprised me other than that now Calvin won a major. I do have a better feeling about him winning a second than if this was, his first major.
Oh,
well, I mean, it's better than if he had no major.
Oh,
it's a good point. It's a good point. Yeah, Dustin, is there really anything to pick up here, or is it like a kind of a copy and paste with those top players?
Yeah, I don't think it really moved the needle for anyone because, as we've already discussed, this is a pretty soft course. Most of the top players placed about where you'd expect. And so going to a much different environment where you're going to be playing at much more difficult course, particularly the Monster, you're not really carrying over results from this tournament, I don't think. And again, a lot of the top guys did do pretty well. So it's not like they were like looking, oh no, somebody that I expect to do well at the major all of a sudden struggled at this one. Maybe they're off their game. Not the case. I mean, you look at Gannon Burr, Isaac Robinson, AB, Macbeth, Wysocki, the list goes on. all these guys played pretty well. They're all pretty much in the same position they were. As Hunter alluded to, maybe you think this could be a breakthrough for Calvin, just like AB getting his first win was a breakthrough to get more wins on tour. Maybe this is Calvin finally breaking the major thing. I don't know. Then, Maury Villman looked good at this event after having a tough one at Crokle. Maybe that helps him as like a European guy to have a chance. But for the most part, I think everyone's about the same. I think maybe Hammonds and Aderhold moved down a little bit because they had some recent success and struggled at this event. But for the most part, not much. And then for FPO, yeah, all eyes are going to be on Kristen. Can she bounce back? Like, I think people still would have had Kristen the favorite to win Worlds a couple of weeks ago, despite some struggles. And now I don't think that's the case anymore. I think you'd have a hard time convincing people that she's actually the favorite to win the Worlds at this point. And then meanwhile, like all the other top players are in about the same spot as they were. Your Holland, your Ella, your Evelina. All these people are basically in the same place. So yeah, I don't think this was a big indicator really for anyone on who's going to make it through. Although I will say some veterans like Paige Pierce and Katrina are sinking even more after an event like this one, which is really tough.
Yeah, it's whenever the top of the field is playing well anyways, it is kind of hard to nitpick and find a reason to think that it won't be somewhat similar. All right.
Can I
Hunter,
give a sneaky pick real quick before I
go?
Go on.
Number 2 in the world off the tee is
Andrew Presnell. Oh.
Nope. Is my sneaky pick to win Worlds.
Aaron Gossage.
He almost did it one time. He got beat by Paul.
You're thinking the Goose Man?
It's not going to be Aaron Gossage. You got to be able to putt to win these tournaments.
His putting has been great late in his final round. His putting has been great.
We'll see how it does if he was in winning time.
Yeah, it's easy to have great putting from fourth card.
Okay, so what?
I don't actually know where he's at, but
so what was this? What? How did he almost win Worlds at?
Almost
3 years ago. His putting wasn't gone.
What?
His putting wasn't gone yet.
But also, you just said a keyword there. Almost.
I
bet he could. I could believe Aaron Gossage could almost win a lot of tournaments.
He's always struggled putting, Hunter.
He wasn't like a lights out putter, but
yeah,
that's what I'm saying.
He missed a lot of putts.
I just saw some clips in New Zealand that just.
He is a great thrower. I just don't know that he's get. You have to make so many putts down the stretch.
Forehand is all I'm going to say.
I think he could get in the top 10. Sure.
Sully is another guy too.
I like Sully.
Another guy that the putt kind of plagues him.
All I'm going to say is Aaron Gossage is 90th in C1X putting for the year.
You just can't win tournaments with that percentage.
No, but how did he do in this last tournament?
I don't care about like one tournament. Sample size is more important than one tournament.
He still took 12th.
I mean, you just said that Kristen's not going to be the favorite because of what she just did.
No, it's multiple events that it's been this way for her, though. It's not just this one freak of it's the fact that she's been struggling for the last several events.
So how many events then for Gooseman to be better at putting? The last 3 events?
5.
5 events?
Yeah, give me a few events.
Give me the averages last 5.
I love that we're just like moving the field goal post.
I'm not moving the field goal post.
That's the name of the game. All right, Hunter, Dustin, tiebreaker.
Go on.
Who can tell me closest to where Evan Scott finished at the ED?
I love me some Evan Scott. I love me some Evan.
I'm gonna go 28th.
I was thinking, well, I don't want to go too close to his because that's just kind of cheap. I was thinking 32nd in my head, but I feel like that's. Well, you know what? I'll just go 32nd because if he was terrible, that goes to me. If he was better, it goes to Dustin.
He finished 24th.
There you go.
Ding, ding, ding. Dustin the winner. All right. Hannah and Dustin.
I will say,
mine
and Dustin, I know I'm off the screen. Mine and Dustin's last round there, fewest points handed out by Trevor possibly ever. There's 4 collective points between us.
There wasn't a lot left to be said. That's really not your guys' fault. It's just kind of there wasn't much left to be said.
I'm just saying. That was ludicrous.
I had another 2-pointer earlier in the game, so it was a
tie. 2 2-pointers.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Does that mean I had a 1-pointer?
No, you get pretty steady.
There was something else earlier. I was like, I for sure just gained 6 points. I looked down and gained like 3. I was like, what the frick's going on tonight? Did Trevor have some bad Mexican or something?
The questions were a little redundant. You guys had the same opinions. That's on me.
I popped off on some of them though.
It's never your guys' fault. Understand that. It's always my fault. I'll take all the blame. I just don't even look at the comments section.
You're allowed to hit the button more. It's legal to push the button more. You don't have to stop it too.
You're right.
It's crazy.
But here we are. Gosh, dude. Okay. All right. Hannah and Dustin, final topic. So with Calvin no longer the king of the can't win the big one discussion, who are the next candidates that will catch and hold this narrative if something doesn't change soon? Are there certain players that will be attached to this narrative, in your opinion, that might not deserve it? Hannah, would you like to go first?
Yes.
Shocker.
Yeah.
I'm taken back by this choice.
All right, go ahead.
Yeah, so I think there are now three co-kings of this narrative: Ricky Wysocki, Simon Lizotte, and I don't mean to be a hater, but Anthony Barella. Ricky is obviously a legend in the sport and is a six-time major winner who hasn't finished worse than 12th place since 2017 in a major, with his average major finish being sixth. But he also hasn't won a major since 2017 Worlds. I think a lot of people assume that this was his weekend to change that, but he came in seventh place, 14 strokes off of the winner. Simon is a forever fan favorite and has shown such moments of brilliance, but even with 5 major podiums, including his most recent USDGC in 2023, he has yet to pull off a huge win like this. AB has become a true top player in the past 2 years, especially. He has 3 second place major finishes: Worlds 2023, USDGC last year, and Champions Cup this year. But it feels like every time we talk about him and the majors, all we can talk about is his blow up on hole 16 at European Open in 2023. And he ended up taking 7th at that event. He's been trying to rewrite that narrative, but it's just not been happening yet. Undeserving of this narrative, in my opinion, would be Nicholas Antela, Ezra Robinson, and Paul McBeth. Nicholas does have 4 second place finishes and majors, but I think a lot of his success and consistency is still pretty recent. So I think he has probably another year or two before he starts being in this talk of will he win a major or not. I think it's natural for a lot of us who see Isaac Robinson's major success to assume or expect the same thing from Ezra, but I just don't think he's quite there yet. So that conversation feels a little bit premature too, even though I'm sure he feels a little bit of that pressure. And lastly, Paul is now 2 years without any wins, and as the GOAT, we still have huge expectations for him and expect him to dominate at these big events like he used to. But the reality is he has won 3 majors in the last 6 years, with Worlds in 2022, I believe, being his last one, and he's won 6 total majors during Ricky's 8-year drought. When it comes to majors and who's in the hot seat right now, all eyes, in my opinion, are definitely on Ricky, AB, and Simon.
Okay. I've got things to say, but I'll let Dustin go.
Yeah, so I mean, I think like if you're going by just the pecking order of like how people are playing right now, the next name on the list hasn't won a major that has the potential to do so is going to be AB. I mean, he has popped off, the 4 wins last season, looking strong this season as well. But I think the big key thing is here, as you said, doesn't change soon. I think he's still so young in his career that we're not going to put that crosshair here on him yet. Now, over the next few seasons, if he keeps winning tour events, doesn't get a major, then that will become a narrative. The same thing could be said for Nicholas Antela. Like, this is a guy who's become a consistent contender the last couple of seasons. He has some wins on tour, but again, he's kind of fresh in getting into that position. And so I don't think you're going to hit him too hard for not winning a major yet, but that could change in a couple of seasons. After that, I think you have a category where it's players who either haven't gotten a tour win yet, so you're not expecting the major, or they just started getting wins, or they're still really young in their careers, and so there isn't a big target in their back yet. And that would be people like Ezra Robinson, Ezra Aderhold, Sully, Aaron Gossage. Like some of these guys haven't even got wins on tour yet, so you're not going to put them, on this major crosshair thing, despite not being able to get a major. Now, then you have the droughts. Ricky being the biggest drought, obviously. McBeth's drought, much less so, because he's not that far away from a 2022 Worlds win, right? So those are some other names. But, if I'm going to pick some names who haven't won a major yet that are on this list now, then I'm thinking Simon Lizotte has got to be a candidate. We had the second win of his career in 2022, where he won 4 events. He won 2 in 2023. He won 1 last year, none so far this year, and no majors. So he's going to be on that list. Matty O could be one you put on that list because this dude's been competitive dating back to 2005. He didn't get his first tour win in 2023. And so that was a big weight off of his shoulders, but a major is another weight now. Now, when we get to FPO, I think Holland Handley technically doesn't have a major, but she has one in her hearts with Throw Pink. So she's going to be a name you'd probably put up there. Ella Hansen has all the tools, and she has some tour wins. So you're probably going to put her name in there. You got the Paige Pierce drought. But the interesting one is this. Henna Blomroos has never even won a tour event, much less a major. And we know that she's a great thrower to this, but she can't putt. We said the same thing about Evelina, though. But she has been able to actually get some wins, including majors. So that's another one I'd probably put on there.
Henna's been an interesting one. I actually saw, I had looked at it for Grip Block, but she is one of 2 players with more than 15 starts at a major in FPO that has 100% top 20 percentage. It's Kristen and her.
Yep.
So it's crazy. I was going to say, Hannah, I think that, what you said, AB, the pressure's on him, but then you said Nicholas, the pressure's not because he just recently had success. So what's the difference between the two?
I feel like Niklas's success is more recent, and AB almost won a major at the European Open 2 years ago, and then he didn't. And Niklas hasn't really been in that position. Like he has
Didn't he
some
win
second
USDGC?
places, but
Hmm?
well, he has
USDGC.
more
Niklas
second
almost won
places. But,
USDGC. He was close.
USDGC.
Yeah, world's
He got
different. I
most.
get it.
He got second.
but so that's where I was just like, they're very similar, but AB also has a lot more tour wins, and I feel like he's more in that conversation.
It's not that much
than
different,
Niklas is.
actually. Niklas
Niklas
and AB are almost exactly
more.
identical
I think
boats.
it's just AB's talked about more.
It's just he's
than
got
Niklas.
aura.
Yeah.
He's hated
Yeah.
for his aura.
Yeah.
Whatever. You still had a good show. I'll give you the win.
Yeah, she
But
deserves it.
Thank
You're
you.
all, you just
I
got to be
did-
careful talking
I
about him
did
like that.
realize as soon as this pick started that that's the whole reason I didn't get points. Trevor knew where I was going. He couldn't hear me out. But spoiler alert, Trev, I was gonna go Adam Hammes. I was gonna make this whole point about AB and how it could
Hammes
be
is a-
him. But then Hammes, I mean, the dude's been winning tour events since 2021.
Yeah, he was a
Long
good
I
time.
one.
almost picked him. I
Long
almost picked
time.
him.
Do you
So
expect
should've
Hammes
had
to
me
win
in
the
there,
big one,
Trev.
though?
You should
It's a
have had
weird
me
one.
in there.
That's kind of the weird one about Simon too. Is like Simon, he rattled off all those wins, and it was a crazy hot streak. But like, I almost don't expect the guy to win a major. He's such an interesting player. He's
Yeah.
just like he would just get hot, rattle off a bunch of
Well,
wins,
it's
and like
more
we were
to
all shocked
me.
whenever he like.
It's more. I don't think Simon can't win a big one because I think if he got in contention and had the lead down the stretch, I have no reason to think he wouldn't.
Yeah, I think he could.
It's
Yeah,
more
just-
like I do have very reasonable doubt that Anthony Barella would crack at hole 16 at the Beast. I have reason to believe that.
Tough blip on his resume. That's
Especially
for
considering
sure.
this year it would be twice the amount of strokes every time he throws OB. Because it's
But
actually
you
OB
get
is
to-
the bunker rule.
You get to advance though.
Not
So
far.
he would
Just
have
to the edge
not-
of the fairway.
Not super far.
yeah, but
though.
the edge of the fairway, if you throw a backhand, is like 140 feet.
From
he's
all
like
of it?
jump putting that.
We'll see.
That would be
150.
like-
It's 150 feet from. It's like 150 feet
But
from.
is that from the edge of the peninsula all the way
I'm
to the
saying
end?
if he throws, so this is what's actually going to be really interesting this year is because they're doing OB and you're not just rethrowing. If you go with the Spike Heiser forehand, which is what
Go out
most
early.
players like to do, you're going to have to throw your next shot like 300 to 325.
Yeah.
But if you go with the Spike Heiser backhand and you go OB, you
You're gonna
advance all
cross.
the way up to like the
But
150.
will it actually cross up there?
Yes,
that
yes, yes,
backhand?
yes, yes, yes,
It
yes.
will.
Yeah.
It's hard to tell from the caddy book because
No,
from the
you
caddy
will.
book it looked
You
like it wouldn't
throw,
cross.
you throw over inbounds and then yeah.
That will be an
So
interesting.
it will be
one.
interesting to see if some players decide to go with the backhand.
Oh, I'm
even
sure
though
they
it's the
will.
worst
knowing
shot.
that, I'm
Yeah.
sure they will. Well, great show, everybody. Except Hunter. Hannah, great win.
Hey, at least I'm
Uh,
not hated so much that I never make finals like Brodie. At least I like can get my toes in there a little bit.
Hey, it is what it is. I have a great couple rounds.
Yeah. Anywho,
He's still
yeah.
going to win USDGC. I'm still on that storyline I started earlier this year. It's
It would be
still
electric.
happening.
It would be electric.
It's true. If you guys want to submit any topics for the upcoming shows, make sure to scan the QR code here on the screen. Obviously, we've got an exciting World Championship coming up soon, so should have some fun things to talk about, or maybe just some PDGA drama because we always love that. But other than that, we will see. you
Please,
next week.
someone get busted for drugs for Worlds so we can talk about it.
Also-
Someone do it.
I
Someone
also-
do